Hello, everyone. Today we have a recap of the movie Survive. A family vacationing on a yacht is forced to survive in the desert, as a sudden shift in the poles and magnetic centers of the Earth causes the world's oceans to change their location. The movie begins with an optimistic warning that, throughout the history of life on Earth, there have been 5 mass extinctions, and the 6th one is approaching. The story then shifts to the Caribbean Sea, where a family is vacationing on a yacht. Tom and Julia, the parents, their daughter Cassie, and their younger son Ben. While the father is teaching his son the basics of fishing, and the daughter is munching on apples while listening to music, Julia decides to go for a swim. At one point, she feels an underground tremor. These are the harbingers of an impending disaster. Due to magnetic storms, not only the yacht's compass goes haywire, but Julia also loses her focus and starts to drown. Tom notices her distress in time, orders their daughter to leave the deck, and then steers the yacht toward his wife. He dives in to save his disoriented wife and successfully rescues her. Julia stays calm and doesn't grab onto him, which helps avoid further complications. On board, Tom gives the children a lecture about the importance of warning others before going for a swim and not drifting too far, so they can call for help if needed. In the evening, the family celebrates Ben's 13th birthday, lighting candles on the cake and handing out gifts. Among the gifts is a laptop, a creepy mask, and a good luck bracelet. After the formalities, the family takes a photo to remember the occasion. Then the children go off to do their own things. Cassie video calls her boyfriend, Adam. She heads to the deck to have a private conversation, away from the adults. She notices on the video that a storm has started in the city. Lightning strikes so frequently, it looks more like fireworks on New Year's Eve. Suddenly, the connection cuts out, and Cassie complains to her parents about the lost signal. However, their conversation is interrupted by mysterious sounds from outside. Ben climbs onto the roof to turn on the spotlight, and the family notices a pod of whales swimming by. Tom explains that they are following the magnetic field but sometimes get off track due to storms. One of the whales swimming under the boat hits its bottom. Tom has to dive with a flashlight to assess the damage. During the inspection, Tom cuts his shoulder. Julia, being a doctor, stitches him up, and the man says things are bad. The whale damaged the bottom and the engine. While the adults are trying to start the engine and send a distress signal, Cassie walks around the deck with her mobile phone, trying to catch a signal, but to no avail. A little later, a meteorite appears on the horizon, breaking into pieces. It falls into the sea nearby, and the family climbs onto the roof to get a better view of the impact site. They notice another meteorite falling even closer. In a panic, Tom miraculously starts the engine to move away, but Ben notices a third meteorite coming straight at them. This meteorite turns out to be a satellite, and its debris is floating on the waves. Additionally, the engine starts to smoke and breaks down. When the compass starts spinning like a fan, Tom orders everyone to go down to the hold and close the hatches. The yacht starts shaking from the storm. Cassie gets seasick and vomits, while pressure changes cause Julia to have a nosebleed. Tom's ears begin to clog, and somehow the anchor breaks a window in the saloon. Waking up the next morning on a battered yacht, the family slowly emerges from the hold and looks around in astonishment, unable to believe their eyes. Instead of the endless ocean, there is a desert outside. The sea has disappeared, and now all they see is rocks and dry seabed. Tom suggests the hypothesis that a shift in the poles and magnetic fields occurred, something that happened 700,000 years ago, causing the ocean to change its location. The water has moved to where land used to be. Cassie realizes that her boyfriend is probably feeding the fish by now and becomes upset. Ben makes a marker out of balloons so that other survivors can find them. Meanwhile, the parents are tuning the radio and contact a scientist named Now, who was descending in a submersible during the incident. His partner died, and the scientist, after making some calculations, suggests that the water will return in a few days. He advises the survivors to get as high as possible. The parents suggest using the submersible, but it's only designed for a maximum of 3 people. They beg the scientist to take at least their children, but he doesn't respond. After some hesitation, he eventually leaves his coordinates. According to Tom's calculations, it would take 3 days to reach the location on foot. The family spends the night on the boat, and the next morning they prepare to leave, packing supplies into bags. Tom notices a limping man with a dog and a homemade harpoon made from a stick and a knife walking through the desert. He walks toward him, offering a water bottle, but the stranger, after drinking, behaves ungratefully. He kicks Tom in the face, and when Tom falls, the stranger stabs him in the stomach with the knife and then finishes him off with a blow to the throat. Julia, stunned, runs back to the boat. The stranger throws the harpoon, grazing her arm. Julia hesitates to pick up the weapon and, climbing aboard, gives Cassie a flare gun and hides the children in a compartment under the seat, instructing them to shoot if the stranger finds them. Julia, armed with a knife, hides in the back of the hold. The stranger breaks down the door, eats some canned food, and walks around the boat looking for the woman. Julia manages to escape through a hole in the hull and hides under the bottom. However, she forgets about the dog. The animal lunges at her, but she takes care of it. The stranger, coming up to the deck, sees the dead dog. Meanwhile, Julia climbs onto the boat from the bow and sneaks inside to get the children. But in the saloon, the killer ambushes her and beats her, knocking the knife out of her hands. The stranger starts to strangle her, but Cassie, deciding to open the seat hatch and aim the flare gun, knocks him down. The shot causes a fire to break out in the saloon. Julia orders the children to run, while she goes back into the fire to retrieve the maps and supplies, not forgetting to injure the killer's leg. The children are outside mourning the death of their father, and Julia joins them. But when she notices the limping stranger emerging from the fire, she tells the children to run further. The yacht explodes as the fire reaches the fuel tanks. The fugitives take a break in a ravine. Ben feels guilty for his father's death, thinking the stranger found them because of the balloons they left behind. His mother reassures him, but they must keep moving. The family continues their journey through the desert. Ben stops to admire a hammerhead shark, which was pulled from its natural habitat during the catastrophe. They reach a lowland filled with barrels of nuclear waste, but unfortunately, this proximity doesn't give them any superpowers. While moving past piles of plastic bottles, they notice a plane that once crashed but is now lying on the ground. The family climbs inside to rest for the night. Julia tells the children how she met Ted. The next morning, when Cassie steps outside, the father's killer sneaks up on her, but she manages to escape when Julia attacks him and kills him. The journey to the submersible continues. Ben, spotting a water source, rushes to it to drink, but soon he feels ill. When they reach another pile of trash, Julia and Cassie build a shelter out of plastic chairs. Julia gives her son an injection, and they lie down to sleep. At dawn, Julia hears a strange noise, and stepping outside notices impending danger. In panic, she tells the children to run. The family reaches a tilting freighter, where other survivors are gathering supplies. They run toward them for help, but the survivors lock themselves in a container. When danger appears on the horizon, Julia and the children are forced to climb onto the roof of the container, escaping from the carnivorous crabs advancing toward them. One of the crabs manages to grab her leg. The crabs break into the container through a hole. The survivors inside shoot back with pistols and shotguns. However, the crabs' overwhelming numbers prevail, and they catch up with them. Julia bandages her wound but still loses consciousness despite the children's pleas to stay awake. In the morning, when the weather changes to dry and dusty, Julia wakes up. The children are gone. After confirming that the crabs have left, she goes down and retrieves a shotgun and shells from a dead woman. She finds the children. Cassie and Ben had searched other containers for supplies. The boy loads the shotgun, and the mother cauterizes the wound on her leg using gunpowder from a shell. In one of the containers, they find drinking water. After checking the bodies, they find a pistol and a radio. Julia contacts Now, who also got injured during the crab attack. He tells her he made a miscalculation, and the ocean will return today. They need to hurry. Now launches a flare into the sky. Noticing the flash, the family heads toward the signal. From the top of a mountain, they see the submersible at the bottom. The survivors begin their descent. As they move through a ravine, they are caught in a rock slide. Julia manages to push the children ahead, but she gets trapped in a dead end. She tells them to run to the submersible and promises to catch up later. But that's a lie. She knows there won't be enough room for all of them inside. The children obey and race toward the rescue device. Upon arrival, they see that Now is injured. He says that it doesn't matter since he's not going to make it, and he's willing to let Julia take his place. Cassie decides to go back for her mother while there's still time. Julia turns out to be trapped in the ravine, surrounded by advancing crabs, against which she fires her entire ammunition supply. At the last moment, Cassie arrives. The daughter climbs onto the debris and helps her mother climb over the rocks. They run toward the submersible, pursued by crabs. Ben shoots at them from above with a pistol. The injured Now is immediately dragged away by the creatures. As the family descends into the submersible and starts it up, a massive tsunami begins. The ocean returns to its usual course, flooding everything in its path. The submersible starts to rock, and Cassie begins to feel sick again, suffering from seasickness. Pressure changes cause Julia to have a nosebleed, but she remains calm for the sake of the children. When the submersible reaches the surface, the family finds themselves in a devastated post-apocalyptic world. The ocean has returned to its shores, but the world has been permanently changed. City buildings are destroyed, and everything around is engulfed in chaos and disaster. The family, having survived incredible trials, stands atop the ruins of civilization, realizing that everything that came before is now a thing of the past.